All right, so since we had a little bit of a late start, we'll jump right into it. I am Melissa Moranci. I am the Director of Sustainable Knowledge and Engagement at AIA and the staff lead on the 2030 Commitment Program. With me is Jesse Walton, a member of the 2030 Commitment Working Group. We're just gonna walk you through some of the updates that we made for 2023 reporting cycle. And so, oh, also joining me, I think, is Vanessa Hostick, if you're
I
there.
am. I just didn't have my video on. Our
Perfect.
internet is it's strong at the moment, but we're currently getting 20 inches of snow, so I'm not going to give my internet or my electricity too much pressure right now. So no video for a little bit.
That is fair, but you'll hear Vanessa's voice a little bit throughout this as well. And hopefully she can maintain power and internet connection through the whole call. All right, so get started. I'm going to share first and foremost a link. So it's a little web page in our help pages that outlines the updates that we made. So I'm going to share the screen on that, but so we can walk through it. But that way you all will have that link. You can bookmark that link if you need a reminder at all as to the updates that we've made. And sorry, I see a little distracted trying to make sure everyone can get in through the waiting room too. I'll leave anybody behind. Okay, so we'll start at the beginning. Happy reporting season. I'm sure this is everybody's favorite time of year. So excited to get in and make sure all of your projects are properly documented in the DDX. So the updates that we made this year were primarily around fuel sources. So first, I'm going to ask a question to the group, and I'd love you all to give you a second to put in the chat. How many of you use our fuel sources within the DDX in reporting? So how many of you identify who actually puts in how much gas, how much electricity, how many renewables within the fuel sources part of the DDX? Let's just get a little bit of a tracking to see how many of this is going to be an effect on. And did everyone even know that was an option? When data is available, I think that's probably pretty true for everyone. I don't think everyone does it for all projects, but for those that you can, seems to be pretty typical. Love that you haven't to date, but have started educating on adding this info. That's how we make progress, right? So I think that's perfect. Anybody else want to weigh in on whether or not they use fuel sources? Or we're just going to go with the yes when possible across the board? All right. From what I've seen, which is the back end of the DDX, most people who use it have not started integrating fuel sources. We are hopeful that people will continue to do that when it is available, and then ramp up over time, including more and more projects that include fuel sources every year. So this is primarily updates to the fuel sources area. So this option has existed for a while, but now we are strongly encouraging that you use that to facilitate the future features related to operational carbon calculations and total carbon intensity calculations. So fuel sources and renewable energy. When inputting fuel sources, renewables will not offset fossil fuel usage. So renewables will only offset electricity, and that is important to know as you move forward. For example, if project uses natural gas for heating, an equivalent surplus of electricity generated on-site solar panels will not offset the natural gas usage. Once that carbon is emitted into the air, you can't get it back. So hopefully we can use renewables, but it will not offset your gas usage. This follows methods of other national programs and is a part of our shift to understanding total carbon in buildings. So another big thing you're going to see. Does anyone have any questions on that first before I jump into the next little piece? You can put it in the chat. I think you guys can unmute yourselves and ask questions too if you are interested in doing so. And if not, I'm just going to jump ahead. So the next is we're defining gross PEUI versus net PEUI. So this is different than previous years. We are defining gross as this is the PEUI as total annual site energy use intensity divided by total area without any contribution from on-site or dedicated off-site renewables. So this is kind of like your taxes. This is the base number before you subtract anything else out. Net, this is the PEUI as a total annual site energy use intensity, subtracting the contributions of renewable energy divided by the total area. Net is typically the lower number as it takes into account the offsetting building demand with renewable energy. So net is what you get when you calculate in your renewable energy. Does anyone have any questions about that, since that is a new add or new definitions? And I'll show you in a minute in the DDX where we're going to see these different pieces. I love how everyone's understanding everything so clearly. Off-site renewables. Dedicated off-site renewables count equally to on-site if attributed to the building and RECs are retained. Dedicated off-site renewables, including things such as solar panels installed on a nearby parking garage, but owned by the building owner or a project who retains related RECs. Purchasing of green e-certificates or RECs does not count towards dedicated off-site renewable contributions. So when the DDX is doing the calculations, only dedicated off-site renewables will count towards your PEUI. The green e-certificates or RECs will not count towards your net PEUI. Does anyone have questions about that one?
And I will add, we're not abandoning their contribution completely going forward. This was a challenge in getting some stuff changed and implemented in the DDX over the last few months. we are phasing in some carbon calculations and we couldn't get them in before the code freeze. So there will be a future applied credit to that from a carbon perspective. We're just, and we never really have encouraged deducting it off of your EUI. So it's maintaining that going forward. This is just the first of many steps as we switch to talking more about carbon than necessarily pure energy. So there's more to come on that one, but this is kind of where we were able to get through for 22.
So the final update is we have updated the bulk upload. So we have a new spreadsheet. Do not use the old spreadsheet. If you are going to do bulk upload, head over to, actually, let's pause for a second. We have a question in the chat. Can you remind what RECs are, renewable energy credits? So are we not tracking purchased renewable credits yet? Vanessa, you want to take that?
Correct. Yep. So some of this clarification came out where someone asked California 30% of their local grid, the power company was buying credits to offset it. Did they get to pass that along? And it really didn't make sense because we're looking at the building itself. So, if you do lead projects and you go in and you purchase energy credits, we don't deduct that from the EUI. That will come in as a carbon credit later. It's just right now you don't need to put it in. You can put it in for good practice. You'll just notice it doesn't change your number any.
So rather than go into the bulk upload, I'm going to demonstrate that now. So if you head over to the tracking data and down to fuel sources, you'll see that it looks a little bit different in the calculation area. And so we are tracking, so you can say purchased from offsite renewables. And as Vanessa said, you could put 250 million there, and it is not going to change your net EUI. So we are tracking it. We will continue to have that field and we have that option, but it will not change your predicted net EUI number. So don't not put it in if you have it. We just want you to understand why the calculation will not change when that number is inputted. We don't want you to think it's broken or that something's wrong. But if you have that information, we would love for you to share it. So if you head into fuel sources, you can see the different options we have here. And then this is really the biggest change for this year, breaking out electricity from purchased offsite renewables and dedicated offsite renewables. And this is where the side it will calculate fossil fuels. And then over here, it does electricity. So you can see also if you have the fossil fuels, you cannot get to net positive. So another example here, you can see when you have gas, that is calculated on this side, but you cannot offset that with renewables as you can with electricity. Has anyone gone into the DDX in the past 18 days and started to poke around into this fuel sources area and seen some of these updates?
I'm also curious if there's anyone who's never used the DDX before, if you're a brand new signatory, because after we look at the pretty new bulk upload spreadsheet, we could walk all the way through a brand new project. And those who are maybe more familiar users, you could drop off or drop your questions in. But don't be afraid to ask us to do that, because some of us live in here all the time. And it is mostly intuitive, but sometimes it's nice to walk through it with somebody who spends a lot of time in there. All right.
All right, we'll definitely.
Yay, all these new users. It's so exciting. We'll go back and walk all the way through.
All right, so we'll pop back to the bulk upload and then we'll head back through for a walkthrough. All right, so anyone here a an old time bulk import upload user that has used the spreadsheet before, besides Jesse? Because we know that there have been some comments, questions around the bulk import, in that it's a big spreadsheet with lots of different fields, and sometimes it was a little confusing as to what actually needed to be in each field and how it needed to be written. So the biggest change, let's see if I can open that. Where is it? Got lost in my two screens. So the biggest change is that we have tried to add better instructions into the bulk import. So up top, including some instructions, some color coding, and that way you can see different construction types, and it gives you examples, office location, and it gives you some instructions. So office location must match an existing office location in your firm's profile in the DDX. So this is an issue. Lots of people who do bulk upload, they say Cincinnati, Ohio, whereas in the DDX, it says Cincinnati, Ohio, USA, because you have a lot of international firms. And so it needs to be written in exactly as it is written in the DDX. So just pop over to the DDX and see how the offices are written, and make sure that it matches that. And then the big change is we do again have gross PEUI and net PEUI. You don't have to put in both. You can put in both, and then they will both exist in the DDX in the respective fields, but put in one if that is what you have. And the other note is, if you do put in a gross net and a net PEUI, but you still continue to go over and do the portion that has fuel sources will override what you say your net EUI is. The DDX will do its own calculations based on the fuel sources, and will calculate it on its own, and it will ignore your net EUI number, and it will not tell you that there's an error. It will let you put that in, and it will just do its own business on its own, and spit out the number that it gets based on that information that you calculated. Let's head back to the web pages so I can make sure we covered all of the bulk.
And there is a bulk specific webinar coming up next.
Yep.
I have that date handy somewhere.
It
February
is
14th for Valentine's Day. You can join us and speak all things beautiful spreadsheets. Will be wonderful. So if that's something you guys haven't done and you're really looking forward to it, that's where probably a lot of our power users will be on. You can get a little bit of peer-to-peer coaching there, and I think we'll spend a lot more time on it there. If you've never used it and you are really happy just staying in the DDX, don't even worry about it. I'm with a large firm, we don't use it. We're all in the DDX, so it's lovely to see it's there. I'm glad it's an option. But if you've not used it, don't get too worried about it.
very true. So those are the big ticket updates that were done this year. To the fact that we do have gross and net EUI, I do want to show you if you have not added fuel sources, you can say both your gross EUI and your net EUI if you have both of the numbers, but you are not sure what the fuel sources are. You can tell us both just your gross and net without explaining exactly where it all came from. Hopefully everyone will get to fuel sources down the line, but we are definitely, if you have the information, share it. And as you get more, share more. Does anyone have any questions on the the overall updates before we go through a general walkthrough? I'm going to do one of those super awkwardly long waits. Can I send the latest bulk upload spreadsheet? So that actually should be, you should be able to find that here. So I'll send you the link to the help page regarding bulk import. So you can find that on the bulk import page. Note the Excel has all the cute colors and instructions and all that. The CSV does not, because you can't do that to a CSV file. So you can't make it cute and have instructions within that format. So you can only find all that helpful information in the Excel template. All right, let's, if you come up with other questions around updates or any other questions as we walk through the overall DDX, drop them in the chat. If not, let's walk through creating a project. And I'm gonna have Vanessa and Jesse give me all kinds of project information. What's the name of the project that we're doing? What are we making up today?
Let's just call it Office Building 1.
All right. We are active.
Yep. You want to drop that down for a second? We'll talk about what those mean.
Sure.
So an active project is one that you're currently working on. It's in either design or construction during the 2022 calendar year. When it goes on hold, it stops counting toward your total numbers. So if you have a project that you were working on, you get to the end of schematic design, everybody takes a break because they have to go fundraise and get money. This is really common in higher ed. We mark it as on hold. It will not show up in your calendar year totals. It's like it doesn't exist. A project that is complete, if you have an entry within that calendar year, will show up in all of your stuff, and then it will not appear again in the next year. And when a project is canceled, which a lot of us had that happen in the pandemic, very similar to on hold, it does not count in your total numbers. If you have a project you mark as canceled and it magically comes back 2 years from now, which I had one that I thought was never coming back and it just arrived on my desk, you can go in and make it active at any time. Canceling it doesn't destroy it. It just kind of mothballs it in the background. So from a mathematics perspective, on hold and canceled act the same way. It's really just a way of kind of tracking and differentiating for your own personal uses there. So that's what each of those mean. If you want to make sure it counts, make sure it's active or complete for the calendar year you're looking at. Project type, we're going to say whole building. Interior only will change your entries on other screens. Instead of looking at energy modeling numbers, you're down to lighting power density. So if you've got a small interior reno or a new fit out, you'd go that round. If you're doing a major renovation, so if you fall to level 3 alteration in the existing building code and you're reconfiguring 6% of your building, you are a whole building. Your reno qualifies. If you're only doing a few finishes and fussing with some lights, you're probably interior. That is literally the hardest thing we go through with teams is at what point is my renovation interior whole building? And there's a lot of professional judgment, so don't get too hung up on it. Work with the numbers you've got. But for our purposes today, we're going to do a whole building because I can make that up in my head.
The downside of this is that you are sort of committed to whole building. As Vanessa said, interior only gives you a different side of fields. So you can't walk that back. But whole building.
You can override the firm project number. So, I'm with HOK. I put my project numbers in there so I can find them later. You don't have to. You can just leave them auto-generated if that's not a thing for your firm, or you just don't want to go through the process of entering those. Don't worry about it. Or I've got some where we've got 3 buildings under one number and I have to get kind of creative. And then I just hope I remember the next year what I was doing. Construction type, we'll pretend this is new construction. instead of renovation. Office, pick one, DC. If you're brand new to the DDX and you have 2 or 5 or 100 offices, there is a way to go in and add offices and add people, and we can show you that later. But for now, we're just going to go with what's here. If you get in and you go, well, I have an office in Atlanta and Houston, why can't I see them both? You might need to add one. We'll do United States. 68856. Congratulations, you have 20 inches of snow in Nebraska with me today. We'll do Myrna, M-E-R-N-A. We're going to build an office building on my house today, guys. Yep, Nebraska, we're cold. I can confirm that. And we will keep to IP. If you do SI and metric, I can't promise you I'll do it all in my head correctly today. So if you do have offices, say in Canada or the UK or outside of the US and you want to run in metric, run it in metric. When you export all of your projects for your own personal records at the end, it will automatically convert them for you. So you don't have to convert them. You don't end up with mixing and matching units in your final download for your uses. It will convert them one way or another. That's also nice for our friends outside of the United States who don't like flipping back and forth and think we're all nuts. They can actually download the whole thing in metric so it's usable for them. It's a really, really nice feature for both sides. Occupancy year, let's say 2024. It's a quick project. Just put it on IECC 2018. Let's go ahead and say 250. I don't know, pick a number. You can pick the 1.5. Start costs. So the ones we're filling in now with the costs are not mandatory blanks. Those are optional. You'll notice the ones that have little asterisk on them up above, those are mandatory. If you don't fill them out, you can't move on. These are optional. So you may not always know these numbers. You may not always want to share those numbers, but we try to put them in when we can. They were historically connected to some DOE research that they were putting out for us at the end of each year. Right now, we're not really doing anything with them. One nice thing is everything is anonymous and randomized when it goes into the system, so nobody's ever going to go, you know, this is what HOK spent on airport X. And I remind my teams that because they all have a little heartburn when we put this number in. Some of my teams just don't put it in, and that's okay. But it's nice to put it in for your purposes to go back and look at some correlations later. And as some of those other research projects get revived, it's useful. All right, hit the little plus sign. So down here under use types, you can add as many use types as make up your building. In our case, we're just going to do office building, medium. We'll do something that's 120,000 square feet. If this was a mixed use office building and we had retail or a restaurant on the first floor, you would just click the little plus sign and keep adding those net areas until you hit the gross area of your building. The definitions of those building use types match what comes out of Department of Energy's Energy Star. Target Finder or Portfolio Manager, take your pick. They have a giant glossary of terms. They explain what is inside each of those use types. So I often get asked, you know, does my courthouse include offices and courtrooms and some holding? Yes, if you go look that up, it does. Or I'll have someone go, I've got a data center. What's included in that? I always have to look that one up, I'll be honest. I've got that thing saved to my desktop because somebody always asks me, I go, I don't know, I gotta look it up, guys. So that is where those terms come from. That aligns with the CBEX terms that we pulled all the baselines from years and years ago. So if you ever get into this and go, I have this building and I don't know what's included, should I break out my cafeteria or not? You go look there and it'll tell you what's included. And that'll kind of give you guidance. Typically, if it's food retail or you've got a big commercial kitchen, you're going to break that one out. But, you know, mixed use or like higher ed always includes a certain number of offices. You don't have to break those out separately. So, you know, you go through and you use it. It's, it might feel a little clunky at first. It aligns pretty closely with the way you classify things for code anyway. So that's where you want to go look at that glossary. And I'm sure we have a link somewhere in our FAQs, but we keep updating those in the program, and I'm a throwback user for over a decade. So sometimes I forget where things are. And then for the baselines, we will just use the ZeroTool baseline that automatically filled in. It's regional and it automatically pops up for you if you have a strange building type that's not in here. So I mentioned airports earlier. Airports is not a category in the dropdown. We always use other, and then we modeled an ASHRAE 2004 equivalent baseline that would have been a CBEX 2003 building to use for all of our projects. And so that's what we would put in there. A lot of those, you can also go to Target Finder if you need something regional. If you are in, let's say, the UK and you want to use the existing building index that they have, you could use those as a baseline. That is where you override that. So it's a little bit of a judgment call, or it's a lack of baseline available, but that is where you put that in. You could use a custom baseline. We don't touch it a lot, but let's say you have a lab building, you're going to go to the IS2L hand kit, get that number and put it in there. And when you hit the use custom button, you'll see that you can record both the baseline and the source. So for a lab building, I might put in, 350, and my source would be I2SL toolkit. And those of you out there in the small residential land think I'm nuts right now. But that also lets you adjust it. So if you get into something or you get into a region where you need to have it, it's the same process for you guys. This page is a lot of target setting and context. So if you want to set a unique target that is more than 80%, you can. You could do it less than 80%, though right now the program target is 80%. And then down below it charts all of the projects that are currently in the DDX. You get to kind of compare to your peers for that project use type. Some of you who've been longer term users or throwback users for the first DDX, you remember the scatter plot. It is now a box and whisker plot inside of each entry. It's not a separate tab at the moment. So this will give you kind of a feel for what your peers are reporting for that medium office building type. We're seeing that the average, like a code equivalent reduction would be 45% for IACC 2018. Your target's at least 80%. And it just kind of gives you an idea of where most buildings fall on here. A little lower than I thought it would be. So you don't have to do anything with that chart. It's just there for reference. So the good news is you filled out all the general information, which most of us can do based on the title block from our drawing sets. And now you need to track your data. So you need to input information from an energy model. You need to do at least one of these in the calendar year to get credit for it. Otherwise, it will just default to a code minimum equivalency. So here, let's pretend that in 22, we were in DD. If you march through all three phases in design in a calendar year, which is pretty common if one starts early, just pick the latest one or pick the one that matches your energy model. That's the trick with that. We're going to say, yes, we had an energy model. We predicted our energy use intensity. We modeled it in December, November, either one. Pick any day. Yeah, that's great. We used eQuest. So it'd be DOE eQuest. There we go. Our lovely design engineer did it for us. No idea what the cost was for this phase. Say $5,000. That's low. Nobody do one of my models probably for that, but I do bigger buildings. If you do not want to break it down by fuel source right now, and that's fine. If you just have a summary sheet off of eQuest and you know your gross PEUI is 32 and you have solar, so your net PEUI is 24, you can just put that in and you're done. You can hit save and off you go. However, we're starting to strongly encourage teams to put in fuel sources if you have it available, because as we switch to more of a carbon focus, we're going to load in some regional calculations on the backside, and we will automatically apply those carbon factors to those fuel sources. So you don't have to do the work. We're going to make the computer do it for us. But that's why we're starting to lean into those fuel sources. For net zero buildings, we're also leaning on that. As you add solar, then it will be able to deduct it automatically from your electric loads. If that's the way you wanted to do it, you're just running off of the UI, you're done. It's in there. No further action. On to the next project. I see the question about changes to bulk import. No, there are no changes after November. The code freeze was in November, along with the testing to make sure that what we thought was in the code for the website really worked the way we thought it did. So that November date should be correct for everything you find. There shouldn't be anything that would be any later than November of 2022. Projects entered last year. We are to update use types and square footage each year as the project develops and changes. Yes, that is correct. You want to update it at least once in the calendar year. We encourage teams to do it at the end of each design phase, each major milestone, while you have all of those reports and everything handy and in front of you. But the goal is to do it at least once a year as you go into reporting. That's correct.
Do we want to look at so we did the base level of reporting. Do we want to look at some of the other options of things that we can report on?
Yeah, we can do that. We should talk about embodied carbon. So we talked about fuel sources. If you have renewables, there's a place where you can put in what kind of renewables. That just kind of helps us track for our reporting who's using wind, who's using PV. This just goes into the annual report and it becomes a great design comparison tool. There are very few reports out there that tell us what is in design right now and who is using what. And so that's really all this gets rolled up into, is that kind of national, regional, this is what everyone's doing right now. Predicted lighting power density is not a mandatory reporting field on whole buildings, but absolutely something you can include. And then you have embodied carbon. This is a newer field in the last couple of years. We've had a really good pickup of people reporting it in 21 and in 20, because it came out in 20. Pandemic does strange things to understanding at times. So in 20 and 21, it debuted in 20. We had a lot of people report it, like just one project, kind of get the feel for it. In 21, we saw a lot more people pick it up. Our recommendation is try to do at least one if this is something you're engaging with right now. Just do one. And then as you understand the system, as you know what you're supposed to be putting in, you can start normalizing on a lot of your projects. So here, very similar to the energy model, you put in the date, you put in your predicted embodied carbon number in kilograms of CO2 estimated per square meter, which is the most common units for that, and it does align with the SE 2050. So this is no matter what you're doing, this is the one that will always be metric because that does align with the other national standards. So for this, let's say we're at 305. One note here, I learned this the hard way, is that you're really looking for something that's got 3 numbers-ish. If you go to put this in and you think you have like 35,000 as your entry number, you forgot to divide by the size of your building. And I say that because I did it on every project I put in 2020 and got to go back and redo them all. So don't forget, if it seems like a really, really big number, you probably forgot to divide by your area. So little thing I learned there. I will say it's one click. It's what we use. It could be EC3, it could be Tally. We are talking about trying to get an API with a couple of different softwares, so it would do this automatically for you. We don't have that in place yet. Modeling tool version, I have absolutely no idea what version we're on right now, so we're just going to declare 2.2 because I don't remember. Typically it's 60 years, so we're going to leave that alone. And we did substructure, superstructure, and enclosure. And we did stages A1, A4, and A5. Oh no, A1, A4, and C, end of life. You'll just pick the ones according to what you modeled for. Tally has a great summary sheet at the back that will tell you which of these you will be clicking. So check on the software you're working with. It will typically tell you. We're going to say no on the biogenic carbon. We've only started playing with that on a few projects, but I know there's a few others out there who have started looking at it. And after that, you just hit save. Any questions on those? Yay, if you guys have been doing embodied carbon, that's fantastic. Yes, Building Carbon Neutral is a fantastic website for reference. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great reference for those of you who might be just starting to get into some of this. So, no, I'm glad some of you have started to look at it. And if this is the first time you've ever reported, if your goal is to just get a couple of projects in and a couple of energy numbers, that is fantastic. Keep in mind that a lot of us chatting or presenting, we've been doing this for at least 10 years. So we have seen many versions of this. We remember the yellow spreadsheets and passing them around. So, if your goal is to just try to get in one or two and get familiar with the system, that is fantastic. We're just excited you're here, and we hope that you're able to leverage the tool for design. Jesse, is there anything you want to add on features or interesting notes on the DDX? That was unfair. I asked you, now I have to find how to unmute.
Here we go. I found it. Yeah, I guess we already went over fuel sources. Did we want to go over how to submit, or are we going to have another presentation on the submission process?
We can do
Yeah,
that. There is another submission, or there is I think one of the final is something along those lines. It might be all questions plus how to submit.
Be good to do it now because there's a couple of things here to add also in the company tab.
Yeah,
one thing to note is portfolio tab is everything you have personally entered. Company tab is everything in your firm. So portfolio, you'll be able to see all of your personal projects, just the ones you've entered. So if you work in a large firm and you are really only responsible for 3 and you don't want to hunt through the 200 projects you submit, portfolio tab is your friend. Company tab is everything, including the offices you have, the employees who have access. This is where you go in and add all of that information. Or if you're hunting down, a project that someone worked on in your LA office 2 years ago, this is the tab where you go find that. And I hope you do a better job of remembering what you name things than I do, because this is always an event. Your general information, if any of that changes, there is a little bit that you can edit. And you can kind of correct that or modify that under Manage Projects. This is your everything. And there's that little upside down caret to the left of Manage Projects at the top, Melissa. If you expand that under Manage Your Projects, we're going to show them how to filter.
Oh, there we go.
Those are the columns, so you can kind of play with what you see. Like I personally like project name, office it's with, year that it's being reported, and then percent UI reduction. That's kind of my default, but that's the ones I've just developed a preference for over the years. Every sustainable leader that I've worked with, we all have completely different columns. It's just personal preference. To the left of the word name, Melissa, is that kind of 3-line, that thing. This allows you to filter. So if you're like me and you can't always remember what you named something, or the project has changed names 3 times, but you remember you worked on it in 2021, you're able to go in here and go, okay, it was on hold, new construction, Atlanta office 2021. It will filter down to just what meets those criteria, which I pick something we have nothing for, but it'll filter it down so you can find it. So if you have a lot of historic data in here, that's a great way to find stuff. You can sort that way too. A lot of times I'll sort by reporting year and kind of see what's new in the DDX. So kind of some fun features you can play with. Office studios and names. This is where you can add offices. So if you open, say, a Miami office, you could add Miami as a location, and then their work can get reported under that office. If you have 4 offices and you want to keep everything under one entry and not split it by office, that is fine. There's no requirement that you list every office in your company here. Maybe you only have 1 office, or maybe you've got 20 of them like I do, and I do split them out in part just so I can find things. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And then under employees, this is where you can add people in your firm with you. that they can get in and work with the DDX. They can report themselves. Administrators can do anything and everything, including submit. An employee can do certain actions, but they cannot submit. And I'm trying to remember what they can and cannot change, and I don't off the top of my head. Melissa, do you remember?
They can't submit. I think only the administrator can approve new employees. I don't think another employee can approve an employee.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if any employee can add a office either. That might also be
That might just be
under
admin.
admin.
And then there's also, or there used to be, viewer. So if you have someone who wants to get in and access information, oh, no, that's not there anymore. So now it's just employee. Okay, never mind. We used to have it, we got rid of it because not very many people used it. I think like my marketing manager was one who wanted to get in and see things, but didn't want to be able to touch it. But I think we've eliminated that. So admin can do pretty much anything and everything we've talked about today. An employee will have some limited items. They can't get in and like delete an entire office. Kind of the general piece there. Yeah, and then submit portfolio. So there's one action you have to remember to do every year in March. And it's not enough to just record them. You have to go in and formally submit your portfolio. So you pick the year you want to submit and you'll hit continue. And it will bring up every project that's listed as active for 2022. And this way you're able to go through and do a final check, make sure it's all there, filter out the ones that say test, because I always miss somebody's test project. And then you can just uncheck it. And then it won't submit that in the portfolio. But that kind of gives you that, that high overview. And from here, you're able to confirm this reflects everything in your portfolio that qualifies for reporting for 22. And you can choose to give consent to publish your company's percent PEI reduction. You don't have to check that box. The top one you do, but the bottom one you don't. The bottom one's just a transparency piece. We will never give out project specific information. It would just be to say, you know, HOK achieved a 60% reduction. You know, that's pretty much all that you'll get. Once you get this fully submitted, I don't remember what the next screen looks like. Oh yeah. Here you're able to display your badge. So you get a badge based on the number of years you've been reporting. It's yours to use in your marketing material.
So to note, this is a little bit different than it had been previously. You get to the processing the submission page. For people who had enormous portfolios, it was timing out. And so you are sent to this kind of holding page. And I think that cute little ding that I had was, let me pause my screen for a second and see if I just got that email that you will get. When you submit, I did not. Takes a minute. And so you'll get an email that gives you the overall reporting number and the badge. But you can also find the badge on the company tab. I think if you go all the way down, you can find your most recent signatory badge. And as you can see here, 118, your portfolio submission that we just submitted. And you will, the admin who's in charge of the overall account will receive an email that also has that information. But that way we don't time out and not have large portfolios submitted. That was a lot, guys. Did anyone have any questions about it all? You just all seem to observe the whole thing. And just, Vanessa did such a great job. Nobody had any questions.
It is a lot.
It is a lot.
Once you get in there, it's fairly intuitive.
So we do have one question from Aaron saying, is it still in meters? Which I think
for the embodied carbon, yes, sadly, we have had many, many debates about making that square feet, but all of the other programs out there that are both in the AIA and under Carbon Leadership Forum and through SE 2050, they all use per square meter. And so we are going to keep it that way to match the others. We have begged them to change it to square feet, but for now, it's still square meter. At least the square foot to square meter conversion is just a power of 10. So I can do that one in my head and move a decimal point, but it's one of the few.
The deadline, March 31st. You can definitely submit earlier. That'd be great. But the last possible is March 31st. But we do recommend people get in there, start working on it. And that way, if you do have issues or questions that come up, we have plenty of time to help you address them so that everything and everyone has submitted by March 31st. There are some other questions about what happens if you don't submit this year. You don't have to. You don't get a badge, but you also, so when you have the badge, you get, that many years. And then you also won't get credit in the report. So it does say, this firm has reported this year. And it is nice to have consecutive portfolio years, so comparison points from one year to another. That we're not going to track you down and kick you out and say that you don't belong here anymore. But if you have questions or concerns that we can help you work through to make sure you can submit this year, please feel free to ask because we want as many people to submit as possible. So we're happy to talk about whatever roadblocks you might be struggling with right now.
So can I come off mute and ask a question?
Anyone can come off mute and ask a question.
Okay, I am obviously off mute. So I'm looking at the new spreadsheet, the template, and it still has predicted EUI. I'm not seeing two fields for gross and net.
So X and Y.
So Y is predicted LPD.
Z is predicted LPD.
Melissa,
not
I
in
wonder,
not in the template,
Yeah.
2023 template.
Melissa, I wonder if the Excel file and the health directory link is not the new one, and there's another place to download the Excel file from the.
There
data.
is. I'll have
Yeah.
to talk to I'll have to update that page. I'm sorry. That is so sad to hear. The other place.
I'm
Yeah,
glad
let's
I
talk about
asked.
the other place to find it. Yeah.
The other place to find it. Where is the other place to find it, Jesse, in the DDX? I'm forgetting right now.
I think it's when you go to upload, or maybe it's at the top.
Submit the portfolio.
No, sorry, maybe go to company.
Company.
And it's at the top of the project lists. So it's that import.
Import.
Yeah, click on that. There you go.
Oh my God.
I'll make sure that link is updated.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
sample.
can you click on the link that you're next to there and paste in the link that you get, just like you did
This
before?
page?
Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
put that in the chat. That would be fantastic.
I
Thank you.
can, and thank you for calling attention to that. Now I can make sure that's correct for everybody because that is very not good.
Yeah, I didn't even realize we could download it from the help site. I've always just pulled it off of this bulk import projects page.
All right, so let's make sure X and Y are correct here. We are in sample one that we just downloaded. And I think it's just called sample, so you have X and Y. I think I just downloaded a few times.
Okay, I'll watch for it on the help screen. Do it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
There were a couple of other features we didn't talk about, and I'm afraid to get into feature overload here.
Well, we only have
Um,
1 minute left.
Oh, well, then I'm not going to bother. We can do it some other time. If you get into something and you've got engineers and they want to get in and just put the information in for you because they're wonderful, there is a way to share a project entry with them. And you can drop that in as a question in the chat, and we can always add that up to one of the FAQ pages or to the YouTube. It might be up there already. I don't remember what we uploaded last year.
Should be in there. But the other part, we will have additional webinars as we move forward. And you can always email us at 2030commitment@ai.org and join us at any of our future webinars. And we'll share that here in Basecamp. And then I think the other important thing, we are trying to make sure that we have plenty of opportunities to give people advice and ask questions. So there will be additional opportunities for engagement and question asking. So check back into Basecamp, look for the emails and 2030 newsletter coming out in February that will identify all those times and options. So we're trying to make this as easy as possible. Ask all the questions. There are no stupid questions. We will answer all of them. And if I as staff don't know the answer, I will get one of these very smart members to answer for me. We will be posting this online. That way we can help anyone who was not able to attend. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.